books by Esther Perel, like Mating in Captivity, that helped us to learn and normalize the idea that pleasure is welcome, that sex is something beautiful. And I mean, dare I say, we went from being sexually active maybe once a month, twice a month, maybe, to like many times per week.
Yes.
You know, and that was kind of the shift for me that just opened up everything.
Welcome to Startup Spouses, where we help entrepreneur couples take their relationship from mediocre to mind-blowing. I'm Marie, an intimacy coach.
And I'm Adam. I am a business coach.
Awesome. Well, I thought we could start off a little bit differently today.
Uh-oh. Throwing me curveballs on a Friday?
Well, yeah, yes, on a Friday you're gonna have to.
It's Friday for us, but it's Tuesday for everyone else.
This.
Okay,
so,
I'm gonna do my best.
So how I want to do how we start off our meetings. So I want you to start off with some good news.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So good news. Personally, had a good weekend this last weekend. We hung out with some friends. We were able to kind of just spend some time together, and yeah, I think that was a lot of fun to just kind of come home from where I would say my professional good news is, and then just spend some time reflecting on that and having kind of a quiet Father's Day weekend, which was nice, spending time with you guys. So that's personal. Professionally, we had our first keynote together. We've done a couple of workshops, but we haven't done a keynote for a conference, and this keynote went really great. We delivered our Reignite the Spark keynote, where we talk about the Spark framework, safety, play, alignment, rhythms, and Kaizen. And it got a really, really great response. I mean, we were the first speakers. You did a really great job, because this was our first time kind of being on stage together. And I think throughout the whole rest of the conference, those next couple of days, we had a lot of people coming up to us and saying that it was their favorite session and that they got a lot from it. And I thought that was really, really meaningful. So with that said, Spark Framework is coming to a workshop, a conference somewhere near you. And if you'd like to engage with us as speakers or for a workshop, give us a call and we'll make that happen.
Oh, that was excellent.
Thank you. How about yours? What's your good news, Marie?
Well, okay, not to tack on to you, but I always, for personal, I think it was great to celebrate you on your day. And each year, I don't take it as like, oh my gosh, what am I going to get for him? I just kind of reflect on the fact that I get to celebrate with you.
Yeah.
I get to celebrate you as an amazing father, and even through all the challenges that we've had, I get to celebrate you too. So that was part of my highlight too, and joy of the week. And then really pushing myself out of my comfort zone to do the keynote speech. But also, it's kind of like a good week to learn more about myself and learn about other podcasts talking about intimacy and how it shapes their life and sex in general too. So
how we learn about sex from pop culture, and how maybe we associate that with our sex lives. Is that right? And our expectations and our actions and all of that good stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it was interesting because they were talking about it and how a lot of young men see porn and see it as a way that they should be in their relationship or in their sex life.
Yeah. Who was talking about this? What was this?
This was the Diary of a CEO, and it was Dr. Rachel Rubin.
Oh, okay.
And
yeah.
So she's a urologist, and how it mainly focuses on women's bodies too, and how there's a lot of biology that goes into women that hasn't been really studied before too. That there's not a lot of emphasis on it, on a woman's body and how throughout their whole entire life, we were just treated in studies that we were men with boobs or smaller men. Like that's how, like even with car crashes, that's how they treated women. In it hasn't even been discovered like lots of portions of our bodies because it thought that our cycles would ruin. Kind of, it was too difficult to study that part.
Yeah.
Because our fluctuating hormones would mess up the study. So
Right. Interesting. So, yeah. So what I'm hearing then is that they should have treated men like large women. Is that what we should have been doing?
no,
No. Okay.
I think they're two different. They're
Right.
two different people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So, yeah.
Oh no problem. I really like to dive deep in because being in this area of perimenopause, so I really geek out and try to understand the information because it's rough being out here, being a woman in this stage. It's and to make matters worse, it's like you have a child who's going into that kind of stage too at the same time. So it not only can be challenging for me and my understanding of what's going on, but it can be challenging for you of
Sure.
how to understand us. I mean, we barely understand ourselves.
Yeah.
And so I look towards these different podcasts as a way to learn up-to-date information. And so it was very eye-opening to see my journey and how I have changed throughout these years. And it's very important. Like the most frustrating part about it, not only my understanding, but it's difficult at first to be like, where do I find this information?
Yeah.
And it goes back to that idea where the men are looking at porn and then how we grew up learning about rom-coms.
Yeah. So let me make sure that I can understand kind of the through line of the problem that we're presenting here. Is it that when as women mature that there's a lack of not just a lack of understanding because it hasn't been studied as much in terms of how women age, women are affected by certain things, and how we've demonstrated or shown sex and sexuality in pop culture that is kind of shifting our perspective on, or is giving us the wrong perspective on sex, sexuality, and women in general. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. And from that standpoint, we're learning a lot from different podcasts and resources and sex positive sources that give us the right information, people who have studied it, people who do know it, to present the right information. Is that accurate? Is that kind of like what we're going with?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's the issue of the day.
Yeah. So yeah. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about how popular culture has influenced our sexuality, and maybe how that where the line of healthy and unhealthy is on that.
Yeah, I agree with that. So I would throw that question back to you of how you learned as you were growing up about
sex.
Sex, yeah.
Yeah. Well, interestingly, so I mean, we grew up in the Reagan administration or the Reagan era, right? The 80s. That's when we came about, and there wasn't a lot of attention. There was sex education in our school system, but back in our day, it was sound like Grandpa Adam here. Back in my day, we taught sex education by putting a condom on a banana. But that's actually one of the traumatic memories that I have is C. Everett Koop, the then Surgeon General, talking about the importance of condoms. And I seem to remember in my mind him holding a banana and putting a condom on it, and that was one of the videos that we had to watch at some point. Was like, so the visual in my mind of using condoms is C. Everett Koch putting a condom on a banana. I may be totally misremembering that, and just have a weird mind. But I think it's just like this cacophony of just weird experiences in terms of how we learned about sex. Before puberty, it was just kind of learning the mechanics.
Yeah.
There was mostly discussion about like, hey, this is the men have a penis, women have a vagina, and when the two meet, magic happens and babies are made. I didn't come out of those experiences feeling like I had a good understanding of how to navigate the experience of sex.
Yes.
And what would happen, what feelings I would have, what pleasure even was, how to even think about a partner's pleasure, or think about the idea of what kind of relationship dynamics even exist. Growing up, it was man plus woman, and penis plus vagina, and baby. That was kind of the extent of sex education. And then we kind of tacked on top of that, the romantic comedies, which were enjoyable of the day. When I grew up watching like some of the early films where my parents would cover my eyes, but I'd still kind of see through their fingers. I think there was the points that I learned about human anatomy came from certain '80s movies where women's bodies were sexualized.
Yes.
And in some of those '80s movies, like Ski School was one, I think, of something like where there was like a scene where there was a wet t-shirt contest. I remember there was a movie, I think it was Lady in Red or something like that, with the beautiful Kelly LeBrock, yes. Also in Weird Science, which is also another movie. And so that was like the first experiences of actually seeing the female body and trying to do the math on like, okay, penis plus vagina equals baby plus like, now I'm feeling feelings over Kelly LeBrock. How does that all equate?
Yes.
And I think within that equation, self-imposed shame started to develop, because none of the pleasure stuff was ever talked about, or none of the excitement stuff, none of the normalization of hey, we can find other bodies beautiful, and there's a healthy and safe way to do that. But if it's inside and we're keeping it inside and we're feeling embarrassed about it, it starts to develop as shame. So not learning that lesson, I think that's how it kind of imposed itself as shame. Tack onto that, I didn't really learn things about like what nocturnal emissions were,
Yeah.
or the idea of what ejaculation was.
Yes.
So the first time that happens involuntarily for me in puberty, I don't know what's happening, and then more shame kind of starts to develop around it. And I think on top of that, like as I'm getting to the teens, and maybe I'm just like going way down the rabbit hole on like my experience, but I feel like this is kind of like experiences that might be shared by others. We're exposed to like the Tom Hanks, the Meg Ryan movies, which are all a lot of fun, but it starts to impose expectations on how I have to behave as a man, and how I have to approach women who, presented through a lot of those movies, don't want sex, and are playing hard to get, or aren't interested generally. So we're simultaneously sexualizing people and sharing that sex is bad, or withholding information, while also learning in the church community that you shouldn't have sex till you're married.
Yes.
And learning through romantic comedies that sex is only done something sex is only something that comes when you kind of get to that point of breaking a woman down to the point where she's like, okay, fine. That was the messaging we grew up with. And then that doesn't even touch on the porn discussion, but I'll pause there for a moment. We'll get into porn in a second, but yeah.
Yeah. And what I remember the most was the fact, like, the tension between the two characters, like they hate each other, and then all of a sudden they realize that they that they love each other, and then it shows them maybe kissing and going towards the bedroom, and clothes come off.
Yeah.
There's no discussion whatsoever, and then shoot to the scene where they're both laying back and they're like both satisfied at the same exact time.
Right.
And like, that section where, it bleeds into the 90s messaging of that's like, there was no discussion. You're both happy and it was wonderful. And you live happily ever after with this person because magically everything fit together and you know exactly what to do.
Yeah.
So a lot of that was that, how they say for women that rom-com is kind of like porn.
It's porn for women? Oh,
yes.
really? Yeah.
Yes.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. And so tell me more about that. Why is that at a young age do women kind of just gravitate towards the romantic comedy idea? What is it about that activates that?
I think it's because there's no real mention of sex, but they're the underlining thing. So women are told not to be sexual, and we are told that that's bad, and so it's kind of like having the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
Is because, we're not allowed to be that way, and they're not showing it, and everybody's happy in the end. So it must be a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Too. So
yeah.
I think that was a lot of the messaging growing up, that it's romantic, but heaven forbids we have a conversation about what our needs and wants are. Even to, it was even difficult for us to have that discussion together at first.
Yeah.
After how many years of marriage? It was
1,000,000%. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it took us a long time because of all that shame. I mean, you're conditioned by what you learn as a child. And the fact that we're not talking about sex, like in a very, in a healthy way, I mean, makes it more unhealthy. And I understand the argument that a lot of people want. There's a fear around there about talking about it too early, about the idea of talking to kids about sex education, or talking to anybody about sex education, or the right timing. There's a certain conversation there, and I don't know the answer to that. But if we normalize talking about it, to the extent that we can learn it and reduce the amount of shame, chances are that people will grow up more attuned to their own bodies, so that they can understand that there are different body types and that everything's healthy, and also attuned to what pleasure is in their lives. And I think that people get afraid that if we attune ourselves to what pleasure is in sexuality, that everybody's going to be feverishly masturbating constantly. And here's what I've learned about being an alcoholic. Is when you shame the behavior that you are kind of engaging in, and the more you see it as unhealthy, the shame spiral starts to spin, and you start to engage in those behaviors in an unhealthy way, and it starts to become more of an addiction, because it's an unhealthy outlet that is replacing something else that's not great that's happening, right? It's a numbing. It's those activities. So we have to separate out the idea of pleasure and the shame, and yes. I think the idea that just because we learn something that's pleasurable, it's going to lead to an obsessive behavior around it. That's not true. There's something underlying it that is leading to it. Whether it's alcohol, whether it's sex, whether it's heroin. Or obsessively, pursuing pornography, or whatever it might be, those are all rooted in the fact that there's an ism underneath that needs to be solved. That's just a vehicle.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't make the vehicle itself the thing that's necessarily bad,
Yes.
especially when it leads to connection, or when it is part of connection, I should say. And I think that pleasure, sex is an important part of connection and intimacy. And if we're not learning about how to do it in a healthy way, and we're only learning about it from the concept of penis plus vagina equals baby, then we're not learning the whole story about how it can be a very connective experience and how we should incorporate the right conversations around boundaries, consent, everything that really makes it a healthy activity.
I agree with that. And I love your like view through an alcoholic lens, and it's also true with people. Shaming never works. Like shame is like a big portion of people who are overweight as well too, because you're like they don't even discuss it in the doctor's office as well for that,
right?
Because they're just like, go on a diet. And how many people know that diets do not work, and that there's some biological issues that are underlying that too. Yeah. So it's a shame. It's a shame. We are shaming people, and that's not how it works. It does not. It pushes people further.
Shame is an unproductive emotion. Yeah.
And by saying like, oh, you're just going to make them be more into this, that's not true.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, and there's no evidence to suggest that. And I mean, I guess, yeah. And so the question to you is, to the education standpoint, how do we, what does that look like? What should we be doing from an education standpoint with regard to sexuality? What's missing there?
And
access
to it.
Yeah. Access.
I mean, we don't, we have more access to pornography and to rom-coms than we do educating people in the right direction for sex. So access, people knowing about it. I mean, the kids can pick up the phone really easily and find it. They know where it is.
Like meaning pornography?
Yeah. So sex education is kind of limited. So, I mean, we're hiding it, but then that forces the kids and adults to learn from the sources that are more built for fantasy. It's fantasy.
Yeah. So let me ask you this then. Is pornography or fantasies, are those things bad?
No, they're not. They're not bad. It's I say fantasy. That's where you go to a sort of an escape. Like, you know that it's not real. And I mean, cartoons are not real, and you still watch it and say, "Oh, I could learn a whole lot of that
from Bugs Bunny." Yeah,
oh gosh, that was no. Don't go back and watch that. You're like, ooh, that does not age well.
Right.
So, but why are we looking at it as some sort of education? Is because we're lacking. We're having those gaps, and I remember when our kids were going through sex education in school, that a lot of parents were up in arms that they were teaching it in school.
I agree.
Like, they're like, oh, I don't, and I can find sources even right now that says, oh my gosh, why are you teaching pleasure? Blah blah blah. And I think it's important that you know that they're going to try to find it too, and it's going to be in sources that are not appropriate educational purposes. So
what I'm hearing is porn fantasies not bad.
No, it's not bad at all.
Yeah, but they're not educational sources.
No, they're not. But they're using them as educational sources.
Yeah. So I think that's an important point, that, like, you know, there's a saying that the oldest profession in humanity is prostitution, essentially. Yeah. So we've always had sex has always been something that humans have sought out and will continue to seek out. Yes. And by kind of suppressing that, just as we did during prohibition with alcohol, we are suppressing a very an overwhelming human desire that is also responsible for the population of the planet with humans,
Exactly.
and something that is an important part of our lives, to the point where when we get married, if people who wanted to basically be in that crowd that is suppressing education on sex and all of that stuff until marriage, or until and only having your first experience after marriage, that we suddenly are supposed to understand perfectly how that is supposed to happen. That we should do it frequently enough to have children. That we should not think of it as pleasurable, but we should also take away the shame that we had surrounding that for our entire upbringing, and now apply it to being pleasurable because we have the right person. How do we do that? How do we do that switch in our head without learning first that sex can be pleasurable and healthy, and opening up the conversation
Yeah.
around it? This goes back into, everybody, the idea of openness and honesty, which we've talked about on this show. Openness and honesty, and that includes the education that we have with people related to sex. If we cannot be open about that idea that we have so many different nerve endings that are pleasurable, and that there's nothing shameful about it, then we are creating an unhealthy environment around sexuality. We are collectively, if we are suppressing that sexual education, we are creating an unsafe and unhealthy and dangerous culture around sex. That's what's leading to all of this conversation around all of the bad things that are happening from a sexual standpoint.
Yeah.
And we can make it healthier by including more education. Am I right about that?
Yeah. I completely advocate for that,
Yeah.
and that being in schools, and part of it, more easy access for people
Yeah.
who can find that source of. So my question to you is how did you start finding what was the access point for you to finding the education?
Oh yeah. Well, I have you to thank for that.
Yeah, I know.
No, I mean, I think growing up, it's not like I was completely blinders on to what sex was. I think, over time, you communicate with enough people, you figure it out. That's the other thing that we have to realize is that sex is prevalent out there. You said it yourself. You can find porn if you need to. Even in the 90s, when we were going to school, we could find it. It was scrambled on our small 13-inch television. But, or I'm sorry, very large 13-inch television. It was a very large 13-inch television. But it was all scrambled. But we could find it. We could hear it. And you could even find it then. But there were also conversations that were happening in school around it, with people that were coming up. So I learned about it that way. And it wasn't the right way to learn about it, because I'm still not learning by understanding or being able to see visual representations of what's happening, being able to learn about the healthy communication that needs to happen, or the consent conversations. So there wasn't a lot of knowledge there. And when we got married, I think that shocker, a lot of that sexual shame still existed, and so for a very long time, I think that it was hard for me, difficult for me, to really, I think, to really enjoy sex, because it was always a fear of, if I'm not in the mood, then I'm rejecting you, or if I am in the mood, I'm going to risk being rejected. And so there was that conversation that, hey, it's normal. Let's normalize. It's okay to not feel it all the time, but also kind of have it on the schedule, whatever, and normalize that. But also this idea that, it had to be spontaneous, and it had to always be romantic. Like, the idea of scheduling sex was way, that's like, are you crazy? Yeah. I mean, like, that's not romantic at all. Like, the way that we learn it is it has to happen randomly, and we have to have that moment where we just start making out and then it becomes this passionate love fest. And it was, of course, rarely like that.
Yeah.
And so that was that false learning there. And of course, also learning from the scrambled porn that you do see, you're learning different things that just aren't necessarily the right thing. So I think what it took to answer your question is you introducing me to certain podcasts.
Yes.
You starting to opening up the conversation, and also being, I think, going back to the open honesty thing, I think it started with you being vulnerable, and you being open enough to have that weekly connection. Because then we could start talking, we could start having these conversations, and then starting to get curious. You got curious about, like, hey, what are some of those fantasies that you have? And I had never thought about that before because shame, right?
Exactly.
So I didn't know what that was. I mean, but then we can start talking about it, and through that conversation, through your honesty of sharing what you fantasize about, and then sharing what I know about, it's like, oh, there's something new there that I'd never thought about before. And then it was listening to shows like Emily Morse on Sex with Emily,
Yes.
listening to shows like Shameless Sex,
Yes.
or reading books by Esther Perel like Mating in Captivity, that helped us to learn and normalize the idea that pleasure is welcome, that sex is something beautiful. And I mean, dare I say, we went from being sexually active maybe once a month, twice a month, maybe, to like many times per week.
Yes.
You know, and that was kind of the shift for me that just opened up everything.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I really champion like more places that we can find the appropriate education
Mm-hmm.
for sex as well too.
Yeah, yeah.
And I see a tremendous growth in like the dissolving of the shame portion in both of our lives. I want to say that I really appreciate that you talked about this and how vulnerable it is to have these conversations all the time, because it hasn't been comfortable for us to do that at first,
Right.
because it was something very new for both of us. And so what was really important for me was normalizing these conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it seems really easy for us to talk about this right now. You know, it seems so natural for us to have these conversations now that it's kind of almost like we forgot how difficult, and how the more we talked about it, the more we educated ourselves, the less shame. Like the shame started dissolving because
Right.
we were normalizing it, especially for us in our household too.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, would you think the most important part of this is through education and communication?
Mm-hmm. I do. I mean, I think that communication. I think communication and curiosity is important. Openness and honesty, as always, are very important. If you're building an environment just like you are in your business, if you're doing that in your relationship, where you can be open and honest to the point where you feel open and free to share and safe to share any type of fantasy that you have,
Yes.
without shame, with your spouse. I think that opens up the conversation in so many ways, and I think it's important to remember you don't need to engage in every fantasy you have.
No.
That doesn't need to become real life. But when you can share it with your spouse, whatever it is, without shame, and without the fear, the inherent fear that you're going to hurt your spouse because of what your fantasies are, then you open it up to more conversations that actually reveal ways in which you can engage in pleasurable, fun, safe, consensual sex with your spouse, with your loved one, with your partner, with the person that you love, in expansive, fun ways that keep it exciting. That's what's great about that openness and honesty. The idea that we have to suppress that openness and honesty, that we have to keep our fantasies to ourselves or pretend like we don't have them in order to spare hard feelings from our spouse, that's where danger sets in.
Yeah.
Because we're suppressing things that are naturally occurring in our brains. And to say, if I've read the comments out there, and it's and you talk with anyone that's in any type of relationship with the divorce rate that happens due to infidelity, due to cheating, things like that, and you're telling me when I read people that are saying, I never fantasize about anybody but my partner or anything else or anything that, I'm sorry. There's simply a natural instinct for human beings to have fantasies and desires. And if you can talk about that openly and know that it does not take anything away from the love that you have for your spouse and the desire there, it actually expands on it. I think that's what creates a more connected, more passionate lifestyle, when you can talk about those things openly and honestly, because that truly does build trust. Instead of just like bleeding into that rom-com idea of like, of saying that all of my other fantasies have shut off just because I'm here with you.
Yeah.
And I don't know, does that resonate? Is that accurate?
I would agree with that
Mm-hmm.
too. It's kind of like if you have eaten something like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches.
Mm-hmm.
Can you eat a peanut butter and jelly sandwich like for every day for the rest of your life?
I can. I wouldn't eat peanut butter and jelly. I wouldn't eat peanut butter and jelly, but I think the idea is like, I have a smoothie every morning. I have my consistent kind of, because it feels good and it feels healthy, and I have that routine. Some people get into routine, and we're not saying that this is like all encompassing, but then it may be a different dinner, or whatever. But yeah, to your point, yeah, there's variety there.
Yeah, even your smoothies have changed over the years. You're not even having the same one because it has to vary. And if you're having the same type of sex all the
Mm-hmm.
time, do you really want to have that? Like, are you wanting to be in that position?
In that position,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's where I guess like you have the love of a person,
Mm-hmm.
but the desire has to create this sort of gap, this absence, this longing. And if we're doing the same things all the time, and it's the same way, you don't have that desire. It disappears.
Right. It's that learning and constant growth and learning about your partner that makes it dynamic and makes it novel, makes it fun. And the only way you do that is through communication and continued education.
Yes.
And learning those things. Otherwise it is just sex for procreation, and that's not utilizing the gifts that God has given us.
Yes, exactly.
Of all of these pleasure centers. And yeah, I defy you to find anywhere in any kind of religious in the Christian scripture that was written in the red words of Jesus Christ, not by Paul, but that say that pleasure centers are sinful, because it's not, and the idea of experiencing that pleasure is definitely not is definitely not a bad thing. It's nothing to be shamed. And I think for other education sources, it's like I think one of the great resources that normalized the idea of de-shamifying sex, and especially women's bodies and women's sexuality, for me, was OMG Yes, which
Yes.
was a very helpful website to really learn about how women experience pleasure in a variety of ways.
Exactly.
Such a great resource, and even though it is, it very much shows the detail of how women experience pleasure, meaning through real life examples,
Yes.
which is great because you learn
With real
about it
life people.
with real life people, And that's what's great about it is it normalizes that, because an experience for somebody like for any, maybe a man growing up, their only experience in seeing that is possibly from the perspective of pornography.
And it's always mostly a male's perspective too.
Yeah, yeah. And so it's seeing that from that perspective of like, yeah, this is pornography. Already there's a shame around it. But with OMGS, it's empowering that activity, which is and showing how pleasure is experienced. That's why I like that. I like that site as well.
Yeah. So solving this issue today of directing people to more places of more education purposes.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that we've solved this issue?
I think we solved it for all of mankind, of humankind. Sorry, I said mankind there, but it's all humankind. Actually.
Humankind, maybe like finding more sources out
Yeah.
there.
Well, let me ask you this: Did from the women's perspective? I talked a lot about my perspective on that, but have we solved it from the women's perspective?
Yeah, a lot of what you were saying came from me and me telling you exactly.
Right. Well, you are the expert. It takes me a while.
I know, and
Yep.
and sometimes people need to take baby steps and work around it a little bit slower. Work
Right.
up to it. Work up to having these conversations, and
Yes.
that's why I am a great resource for that. Is if you have issues talking to your spouse or uncomfortable, like I can never talk to them about that. That's where my work comes in, and we can have a discussion around intimacy.
Yeah. And that's really important work. I mean, when I first started this process too, one thing that I didn't mention was I did work with an intimacy coach, with a sex coach,
Yes.
somebody who could help me to build the confidence in that area to really be more of present with Marie, and also to to be more intimate, to be more, and that was extremely helpful. That's the work that Marie does, and that's what's helpful. It's also the work that we collectively do through this platform. Is we because when you are able to strengthen your relationship with your spouse, and part of that is being more connected in your sexuality, and also bringing that into your confidence and your communication, that openness and honesty, which is part of what we're talking about here. All of those conversations taken back into your business lead into a stronger business culture. It doesn't mean you're talking about sex in your business,
No.
right? It just means that all of those activities, those very intimate and personal activities that you're having in this relationship, if you're building a business with your spouse, it translates over. That's why this work is so critical, and it's so important that entrepreneurial couples understand that it has to be relationship first. You have to focus on strengthening this relationship, including intimacy, first and foremost, before building that business. And this is the thing that other intimacy or other entrepreneurial coaches get wrong when it comes to relationships. They focus on the business first. That doesn't help if your relationship is not as connected as it needs to be.
Yeah.
That's why this work is so important. So summarizing some of the resources that we talked about today. We talked about OMGS.
Yes.
What are the podcasts that you'd suggest?
Again, Sex with Emily.
Sex with Emily, yeah.
Shameless Sex.
Shameless Sex, yeah.
Those are the two that I have off of the top of my head, too.
Yeah. And we'll continue to talk
Yes.
about that topic here as well.
Yeah.
Also read, Esther Perel is a great resource for this
Yeah,
kind of stuff as well. To
She
learn about
actually
that.
has a podcast as well, too.
She does, yeah. So that's a good podcast to listen to. Read her book, Mating in Captivity.
Yeah.
It's another good one. Yeah. So kind of closing out, as we close out the segment, we want to also do something new towards the end of the show,
Yay.
which is we operate, we drink our own Kool-Aid.
Yes.
We do our weekly meetings. We have we have our relationship alignment. We do strengthen the Spark framework in our own marriage. We also implement EOS in our business,
Exactly.
which I am qualified to implement for companies, and we do that in our own company, in our own business as well. And as part of the relationship polls that we use within our weekly meeting. We talk about our own highlights. We want to highlight for each other where we are living out our core values.
Yes.
And our core values are, continuous growth, play, openness and honesty, rigorous openness and honesty, and connection.
Yes.
So those are our 4 core values, and we like to highlight 1 or 2 each week where our spouse lived into that core value. And for you, I want to highlight continuous growth.
Oh, thank you.
Because of the keynote that we gave last week. I know that was your first time with me on stage, and you owned that room. So much so that people were coming up and they were just so engaged with what you were saying, and they were asking you questions and everything like that. You just did such a big job, and I know that was, a step beyond your comfort zone, which is all about growth. So good job.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I also appreciate you being vulnerable with me and being open and honest with me about this transition that we've had in the last week.
Mm-hmm.
So we've had conversations, like our daughter just came home, and being able to navigate that through the house.
Yeah.
And on even a good resource, in a good day, it's kind of like, oh, there's another person in the house, and then coming back to that. But all of us me and you expressing our concerns and what moving forward and how that is going to look like. I really appreciate you being vulnerable enough to share your feelings.
Yeah.
With not only that, but I mean, challenges throughout the day that this is really difficult for me, and I need some extra support in this area. So I really appreciate that as well. So.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I like this new segment because just that whole idea of sharing where each other have lived into our core values, it just reinforces what our core values are and helps us acknowledge where we're living into that. And if you would like to explore your own values, your shared values, and live more into those values and how you can grow and connect better as a couple, then we invite you to download our free resource, which is a weekly connection workbook, which will help you to start having those weekly meetings. I know weekly meetings sound so unromantic, but you know what? It is actually the most important first step that we took in our relationship to strengthen that relationship, make it more fun, more adventurous, more spontaneous, more romantic, and a 10 out of 10. And it could do the same for you. We've actually created it in such a way that it has the right prompting conversations, the right agenda, so that it's not overwhelming, but it helps you to spark that continuous growth and lean into some of that spark framework so that you can maximize safety, play, alignment, rhythms, and Kaizen. So download that. It's in our show notes, and hope you enjoyed the show. If you liked it, share it with a friend. Make sure to get the message out there. We want to grow this platform to make sure that people are recognizing that you need to strengthen your relationship that fuels everything else.
Exactly.
This is something that we are passionate about. We've done it. I've seen the effects of a negative of that experience from a negative standpoint in our family business. Don't want that to occur to you. So please share the show, and thank you for joining us this week. We'll see you next time.